What's up, Warriors? It's James with Team ECT Campus Rec, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys during this Advice for the Day segment about metabolic waste and the importance of recovery during our training programs. Now, metabolic waste can come in a few forms. It usually ends up in the bloodstream, mostly because of different types of diffusion, but also because that's where it gets filtered out. Now, different types of metabolic waste that you may encounter would be hydrogen ions that usually come from the hydrolysis of ATP. You're looking at carbon dioxide based on certain respiratory functions as you're starting to get depleted from oxygen or depleted of oxygen. A few other things, lactic acid will usually accumulate in the blood, but that usually filters out pretty fast. And then you might also see stuff like ammonia that usually comes from glycolytic functions and the deamination of amino acids in muscles and or liver, usually in the muscles, I believe. Now, one of the things to take note of is that whenever you are trying to remove metabolic waste from your body, which is usually through the kidneys in the form of urea or whatever else, however it decides to filter out, you do need to consider that training with a lot of this waste still in your bloodstream and or muscles is going to be very detrimental to your training. May lead to further muscular damage, may lead to certain types of injuries depending on what you're doing, the intensity and the exercise type. But it's always important to try to get a lot of this filtered out before you start going back to training. And that's where a lot of the metabolic cool down comes from. You'll see usually it lasts a little bit longer from resistance training rather than some type of aerobic or cardio training. But as far as that goes, you definitely want to consider your rest. Now, there's passive rest and there's active rest, and one of the things that I like to look at, and this is more of actual active recovery, is doing something to help your body stimulate the bloodstream a little bit. One of the things that you might do would be some type of very low intense cardiovascular exercise. Usually works very well post-workout. So while you're doing let's say a lot of weightlifting, or you're doing a lot of HIIT training, or whatever the case may be, if you end your workout, let's say doing low RPMs on a stationary cycle, you go for about a half to mile long walk, something like that, kind of stimulate the bloodstream a little bit there. It kind of helps aid in expediting the waste removal process. Now, few markers to look for whenever you're looking at metabolic waste and also recovery is going to be if you've suffered any tissue or muscle damage. Most of the time you'll see inflammation and edema, which is a type of swelling based on the fluids that get released into the tissue. A lot of this tends to cause a lack of contractile force, limits your muscular movement. I'm kind of dealing with that myself right now just because I went a little too hard at the gym. Should know better, but trying to get back into it. But essentially what you're trying to look for is if there's any kind of inflammation, swelling, discoloration. You want to try to get that cleared up as much as possible. Now, while it is part of the healing process, you do want to make sure that you're taking it easy while that process is occurring. I usually suggest going for a walk, trying to keep your body moving, help expedite that waste removal process like I mentioned earlier, but also making sure that you're not doing anything that's too high of an intensity to where it's going to cause further damage to whatever muscle or tissue that was injured or damaged. Now, another reason why I wanted to talk about this one is because I usually see a lot of people at the gym doing something to where one day they'll do one muscle group while another day they do a different muscle group, but they'll usually train back to back. Let's say a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday they'll do something like I would do: arms, abs, legs. One of the things to consider is that while the muscle group that you're training may not have been trained that day or that week or whatever, you still have the metabolic waste that is circulating in your bloodstream that is causing the inflammation, that is causing the lower pH of your muscles and bloodstream, and is causing basically the limited function and movement and contractile force of your muscles. The more you work out while you're still in that recovery phase, the more compounding the effects can be. And this can include greater muscle damage. This can include even lowered immune system, as exercise does lower your immune system a little bit, but you're compounding that on, which is going to make it even greater of a chance for you to get something like an upper respiratory tract infection or a cold or whatever the case may be. As far as confirming or denying this gym myth, I would definitely look into scientific literature to see if this training style would best suit your training program. Now, as far as the way I look at things, my personal experience is that I usually try to do more of a full body workout whenever I'm doing my 3 days a week or 2 days a week of resistance training. This usually incorporates, let's say like I did last week, I would do full body with push movements and then a full body with pull movements, or I might do something to where it's a full body resistance training, or I'll do a full body of a cardiovascular or HIIT training, something of that nature, where I'm, if I'm going to make myself exhausted, I want to make my whole body exhausted, give it some time to rest, and then move on, and then do it the next day, like 2-3 days later, depending on how intense I went that last bout. I personally, like I said, I personally find that to be a little bit better, but that's just myself. Now, if you are a little bit more trained, as far as like, let's say 3-4 years of resistance training, then usually you can train a little bit more frequently than some people. This is more for the people who may not be as resistance trained. Like I said, I've got about 2 years, decent, but definitely for myself, I still know that rest time, that recovery time is very essential to make sure that I'm not, going into overreaching, overtraining conditions, or experiencing any of those symptoms. Now, one of the best things, like I said, for the active recovery can also be something that you consider as far as switching off between resistance training and cardiovascular or aerobic training. And that's just, let's say you're doing a day where you start out Monday, you do a full body workout for some kind of resistance training. Let's say you're doing like hypertrophy training, whatever. You take care of that, you give it about a day, rest. Next day, after that, let's say Wednesday, go into the gym. You might do some very light endurance training, throw in a little bit of an elliptical in there to kind of get that full body still, and then give yourself a day of rest, and then go back Friday, and you might do like some more cardio, or you might actually go back to resistance training, and then get back to that point to where you're working whole body again. This time, instead of doing resistance training fully with weights, you're doing more of just a HIIT training with very light weights, or just small items. And that's just something to consider whenever you're looking at programming. So as far as these videos go, they're very short summaries or just kind of brief explanations of what I'm trying to get across. I definitely encourage anyone who is interested in particular topics to go and do extra research. Look into scientific literature. It's the best way to find out about tests or trials that have been done, confirming or denying the efficacy of training styles, of nutrition, supplements, different types of exercises and how they work for specific sports or specific goals. So yeah, I'm just going to keep these brief, but if you are further intrigued, please go check those out. As for next week, though, I am going to be trying to get one together for nutrition. I'm going to be talking about our basic macronutrients with a wonderful macronutrient dish. So we will see how that goes. But this has been James with Team UCT Campus Rec, and I will see you guys later.